Welcome to Section 3 of Unity 3D by Example, Scripting Interactivity. In this section, we're going to take a look at component basics, what the basic structure is of a component, some useful pre-built components that you can use immediately with very little scripting, how to trap player input to respond to interactivity. We'll also discuss how to communicate between game objects, so for example, how to get your player to communicate with an NPC. And finally, in the Pro Tips segment, we'll discuss building a messaging system, which is a useful way to communicate between objects in the background. Alright, here we go. Our play area is just about ready. Our reactor cores are in place and they're already moving into the down position at the start of the game. That said, they aren't responding to the player yet. We need to implement the game's interactivity. Thankfully, Unity offers several built-in elements to make this easy. In this segment, we're going to look at the parts of a component script to understand how they work within Unity 3D. Let's get started. First, we'll look at the reactor core component that we wrote earlier. To do that, find the reactor core script here in the project view and then double-click it to open Monodevelop. Do you see this routine here? Update? Just as the comment above it mentions, update is called once per frame. This means that once every game cycle, this object runs the code in update. Update is where you'll put your code that you need to execute all the time, the brain of your object. Since it runs all the time, you actually want to run as little code as possible here for performance reasons. This is the start routine. The start runs once, when the object is loaded. Generally, start is where you'll put any code you need to run to initialize the object. In our case, we don't need to really initiate anything at this level, so it's blank other than that initial start coroutine move rod line that moves the rods to their down position. There are two other routines that are not included by default that are very useful. Even though we're going to leave them empty, I'm going to add them now so that we can talk about them a bit. These routines are onEnable, which is called anytime the object becomes active when it wasn't active originally, and onDisable, which is called anytime the object is deactivated. So basically, you would put code in these routines to handle pausing and resuming, for example. You can put your pause code in onDisable and then your resume code in onEnable. When we wrote this component, we wrote it to simply take the reactor control rod and move it to the down position. But in a real game, the control rod is going to have to move when the game needs it to, not all the time. To solve that problem, we're going to make our reactor core a state machine, which is just a fancy way of saying we're going to make the reactor core aware of what condition it is in and then tell it how to deal with each condition it could possibly be in. First, we'll add the enumeration of potential states here at the top. And again, I'm going to paste the code in here to be quick. This doesn't actually let you set the reactor core state. So next we'll have to add a variable that uses this enumeration. We're also going to add some variables for venting time, the time each rod stays in the up position. Next, we're going to replace our move rod routine with a process core state routine. This will use a switch statement to react differently to each of the different states that we've outlined. And finally, we're going to remove the reference to move rod in the start routine. And we're going to add a reference to process core state in the update routine. This code is all available in the course materials as well. If you open the Section 3 version of the Meltdown Madness project, you'll see that the reactor core code there has already been modified. Okay, so we've taken our reactor core component and dissected it, learning about the start, update, onEnable, and onDisable routines in the process. Then we took that knowledge and turned our reactor core into a finite state machine, a basic form of game AI. Next, we'll take a look at some of Unity's built-in components and the Unity Asset Store to learn about adding useful pre-built components to our game. Good luck!